Call this meeting to order. Let's have the pledge of allegiance first.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What is your pleasure with the consent agenda?
I move that we approve it.
Second?
All in favor? The next select board meeting is Thursday, August 18th, here at 5:30. Any select board comments, announcements? I just need to make one on record because I did give Casella such a hard time the last time they were here. Since that meeting, I have run into no vehicles or heard no noise, so I just want to put it out there that sometimes all we hear is the bad stuff, and I think that is a huge improvement, and I think they're trying, so I just want to put that on record.
That's good news.
And they actually have posted pricing and whatnot there as well, so they've definitely tried to step up to support what our requests have been.
And I can vouch for the fact that they are checking for stickers because we have had lots of people.
That's what they're supposed to do. A big, huge sticker as a sample.
Okay, business item number 1, Mike Carter, Saginaw County Communications Director. Mr. Carter will provide information about the early phase of planning of a county-wide radio communication project. During the phasing phase, the county will explore the possibility of utilizing property owned by the town of West Bath to build a radio tower.
Mike Carter, thank you for having me. I'm here with Amber Jones, also the county administrator. I think the purpose of this initial meeting is just to see if the town would be interested in working with us, whether that looks like a lease, a purchase, or anything else. We are in our request for proposal is out for our countywide emergency communication system. This is going to be a huge, valuable upgrade. The chief can attest to the radios that need improvement for our first responders to be able to communicate with our dispatch center and the other way. We do currently lease the space on the tower right behind Trinken. That lease is coming to an end in 2026. We do have the opportunity to renew it. However, the lease rates are skyrocketing because they're all owned by a multi-million-dollar corporation out of Massachusetts. They don't really care that we're a small county in Maine. They want to charge what they want to charge, which is the same thing as they would charge Verizon and AT&T to be on there. So we are looking at avenues of putting up our own towers so we can use that for our own equipment and potentially create some sort of revenue stream that could come back into emergency communications for the entire county.
Is there a particular location that you're thinking of, or generically?
Yeah, it's the, I believe it's the 55 acres between the Old West area, northbound, and Arthur J. Reno, the end of Arthur J. Reno. It's I believe it's the second highest spot in West Bath, which it would be in that area. It would.
How much acreage would you actually need for it?
It would be minimal. What it is a 50 by 50 fenced in tower. It will have approximately 108 feet. The tower will be. It'll have a building and a generator on site. And again, this is
we talked about this at the budget meeting. I brought it up. And am I right in saying that Georgetown has given the county a piece of land for a tower down there? Or is it?
Yeah, there's a resident of Georgetown who has offered to, again, enter in some sort of agreement to, we're able to use land on the highest point in Georgetown, Higgins Mountain, which, and we have been working with a radio consultant who can has software to say, if we put a radio tower here, how much will it improve the area. We will see a significant improvement over our current location just because of the height. It's right on top of Richmond Hill, and the higher tower
Do we-
How high is the tower gonna be?
If, obviously, again, normally they're around 180 feet. That's the FCC, that's the highest the tower can be, and not be lit.
Do we have problems, John, as far as radio reception in West Bath in certain areas? So we improve our own as well as other towns.
Yes.
It would be nothing but an improvement all the way around, for sure,
Yeah, and
in my opinion.
This project gets us where we need to be today, and it's gonna be continuously improving over and over to not get to the point where we are now.
And the county's early talks said that they were looking into possibly leasing out space as a source of income on this tower
Yep.
to help defray the costs.
Towers, they do have the opportunity to obviously have cellular companies put their equipment on there, which is who we're paying the lease fees to put our equipment. And that'll put, all worked out with the town, whether it is purchase or but.
So in that parcel of 55 acres, where is the best location, your optimal location?
It would probably be right behind the rest area.
So not smack, you can almost put it off to the side or something?
Yeah, we could put it as close to wherever the state, property line stops, right there.
Just if there's other things to happen on that land, it doesn't
Right.
eliminate those options down the road.
Seems to me like it's a win-win situation. Improved communication and the potential for the county and town, perhaps, to get some income from land that's otherwise pretty not usable, not
Right.
user-friendly.
And the county has designated, well, ahead of time, their designated funds for this from their ARPA funds, so that so it isn't coming from the taxpayer, this whole project.
But it certainly does come within the opera regulations and
Absolutely.
guidelines.
I'd like to go visit the site myself. I mean, not as a group, I just wanted to see it before I commit, and understand. Because we've certainly had people look at parcels of our land for different projects, which is why I wanted to say, if it's on the corner, certainly it doesn't maybe compete with something else that was considering a parcel.
Well, I don't think they picked the exact spot
Yeah,
yet. I mean, they can adjust it.
Well, I'm just saying that we've had a lot of interest in other parcels of our land in this town, and I want to make sure that.
Yeah, and because we also have a landowner in Phippsburg who's willing to do the same thing. Once all these agreements get, hashed out, when the attorneys start looking at them, we will have to survey all these properties to be able to, because there's certain special grounding, foundation work that has to go in. So there will be a spot picked, and of course, any final approval would come from.
I'm
From the
in
town
favor of
side.
it.
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah.
to want to, let's do it. I want to look at it collectively, and understand it better.
And like I said, this is just the early stages to see if you're willing to even, open to even consider the idea. So I just appreciate your consideration.
I would move that we authorize Christine as the town administrator to continue in conversation and to further the discussion, see where we go. Sounds good.
I'm gonna have to come into the town office anyways to get my town sticker, so. I got yelled at.
Oh.
That means it's working.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Business item number 2, we'll see it. The department has one heart monitor which is no longer working and needs to be replaced. Chief Mead will attend the meeting to discuss the quote provided by Stryker Medical and to request support to place the order. The lead time for this equipment is approximately 35 weeks.
Weeks.
Take it away.
Yeah, so we're here for, a special request for a purchase to replace our heart monitor. We have to actually have this heart monitor to maintain the license level that we provide here in town. And as of the other day, the monitor just stopped working and it can't be fixed. So we're faced with the purchase of a new one and to continue to maintain this license level, which is at the advanced. We had an officers' room discussion about it, and the fire department feels that we should continue to maintain that level and buy a monitor. So.
What was the light for your last one, do you know?
This is Ben Hubler, he's the assistant EMS director for the West Bath Fire Department, and he's been working on loaner and pricing, and I believe you also know the year of the other one. Do you know what?
I believe the other one was 2008. So, the LifePak 15s have been out since 2015, actually. So, this model has been out for a while, so they're on Gen 4, so ours will be new, but it is the 4th generation of this LifePak 15. The one that we currently have is called LifePak 12, and that one is no longer, it's electronic. They don't have the ability to fix it anymore, so.
What would it mean for the town to downgrade our coverage?
So, for us to downgrade, essentially, first off, legally, we'd have to petition the state and notify the residents of the town. If they had any comments, it would be a 30-day comment period. And then we would go to the state and drop our license level down. However, some of the things that go away with that, with this LifePak, you have the ability to do 12-lead ECGs for pre-hospital identification with STEMI if you're having a heart attack, something like that. You're able to do 4 leads for significant cardiac rhythms, VFib, VTAC, all very substantial rhythms that need to be treated. It has a built-in blood pressure cuff, pulse ox, and end-tidal CO2 for people with respiratory conditions, stuff like that. And we have the ability with our transporting service with Bath to utilize the same equipment. The big 3 that this monitor does is it defibrillates people that are in cardiac arrest. It paces people who are bradycardic, and it can bring your heart rate up, and actually it's an external pacer, just like your pacemaker on the inside, and it can cardiovert somebody who's in like SVT or rapid AFib.
What is the cost of this new one?
It's right there with our trade-in, and
29,772.
4 plan.
I'm sorry?
29,772.
Is that the total bottom line of the trade-in there?
Yeah.
So $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
And during the budget, how are we proposing to pay for this?
Well, we could pay for it from the capital.
I mean, if you discuss it with Christine, any different ways to pay this for this year?
We have myriad of options. We could have a special town meeting and take it out of surplus. We could use capital. We can take it out of ARPA, which would require a special town meeting.
What do we have left in ARPA?
Oh God, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we have a significant amount. Let me see if I have it.
One thing I would just like to add is this, it's fairly time sensitive too, so.
Well, but there's a 36-week.
Right, but we have to get it on order, we have to have a loaner.
Yeah,
And then
if you need to do the math, it's April. We wouldn't get it till April.
But they give you a loaner,
Once
you place it on it.
we've been able to place an order, they'll be able to get us in something,
Is there
we'll
any-
enter a new service agreement with them.
Requirement of a down payment in order to give?
No, so, payments due 30 days after receipt of all the equipment.
All products.
All
It
products.
seems that the town can find some way between ARPA funds or surplus or
We can
whatever
certainly
to
find the
pay for it.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Suzanne, we appropriated $51,000 out of ARPA funds at town meeting, so we have an approximate $150,000 left.
I thought we did all of their air
The
packs.
fire, I didn't include the air
That's
packs.
like $100,000 for those.
So,
Yeah, so there's quite a bit out already.
About 30,000.
That leaves about 30,000.
yeah, it leaves about 30,000.
But we don't really have an alternative.
No,
I mean,
And so I presume
you
the
have a heart
loaner
attack, you
is
need-
inclusive of this price, or we don't pay a rental until the other one comes?
Now, there's also, I mean, you can also make a payment plan. You know, you order, you can make payments on it too, like anything.
So if the town wanted to do some financing or something with it, the first payment also wouldn't be due until 30 days after receiving the product.
I
But
think if we
that would
have
need to be decided at ordering.
money in the ARPA funds, we should just get permission to use it.
Yeah, I mean, there's substantial restrictions on how ARPA is spent generically.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to using it. I want to understand where we are in that ARPA process. The fire department's really had quite an ARPA windfall.
And we don't need to decide tonight where the money's gonna come from.
I think we should order it,
Think
yeah.
about
And if we need it, we need it. I'm not opposed to making sure the town has what it needs to serve our residents. So I move that we approve the order process, or start it anyway, and get the ball rolling.
I'll second. All in favor? Business item 3,
Thank you.
It's good.
application for on-premises liquor license, Trinken Brewing Company LLC. Applications for an on-premises license, liquor license must be reviewed and approved by municipal officers and elected prior to the issuance of the license by the state of Maine. They've been in operation for how long?
2 or 3 years, I think.
Is this the first time I've seen
This is the first time since I've been here that a liquor license application has come across this table.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm not sure why that is. I've never seen another liquor license application.
Well, did they start out as manufacturing and now they're serving? How did that morph into?
Possibly.
Oh, they've been serving something.
Keep your voices down all morning.
Yeah.
Because they do need to be renewed annually. So I can't answer your question, but,
Okay.
you know, let's hopefully do it right.
I was thinking, I had never seen this, and I
Yeah.
should have, I would have thought, but
So do we understand if the different types of licensing? What's a Class A lounge, Class X?
So while you're looking at it, I can speak to this a little bit. Trinken currently is licensed by the state to sell beers that they brew. And this is to expand so that they can serve wine and other alcohols that they
That's why
do
it's
not
changing.
brew.
Right.
That's why it's changing. You could, because there's so many, you serve your own versus other. So the only thing is, I know that other elements have come up about Trinken and their use of the premises at the planning board, where they've got live music, which is not approved in their zoning stipulation. So I think we need to make sure that as we move forward in official capacity, that everything is followed. Or if there's gonna be a zoning change to accommodate what they'd like to do, we need to make sure everything's done properly, I think.
have there been any complaints from the nearby neighbors? Have there been complaints about,
I've not heard
There's
any.
been no complaints, but they're not following what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, their neighbors are auto repair shops, so I'm sure that they're not really open during those hours, so.
well, there's a couple of homes.
There's homes back there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that it was terrible. I can't hear their music down at my house, they're not broadcasting on the north wind. But, the intention of the ordinance ought to be followed.
I think that we need to stipulate that
I
in
wish
this whole
when-
process.
Well, this isn't something that we would do as part of this particular application, but we could certainly improve communication with Trinket so that they understand what they need to do with the town.
And it would make a difference to me in terms of the ordinance, if we're repairing ordinance, whether or not and how loud things are being amplified. If you have a folk singer singing inside on an acoustic guitar, that is not going to be a noise nuisance. If you have a full-scale 15-piece rock band with amplification that's gonna reach from here to Pittsburgh. That's
My
another question
concern
on all.
would also be, the place is so tiny, what are the rules around that? Because
Well,
there isn't room for anybody to be sending.
Well, that's
there's two things. One, they have outside seating, so I think it's whether their entertainment's inside or outside is one question. But my point generically is, we need to really follow what the ordinance states today. Then it needs to be changed because we're in that process coming down the pipe following our comp plan to review the ordinances. If that's a change that we're going to consider,
But if
that's
this
something.
is selling more stuff, this is just one of my concerns. When you go by there, they're lined up down the road, their parking is all taken. Is this gonna increase?
Yeah, congestion on the top of the hill.
I think I don't think people are gonna go there just because of wine. And they already have an alcoholic beverage available, I don't know how much
They are
that would.
gonna go for the new drinks because people are not all crazy about homemade brew. So this is gonna increase the capacity. Right.
Yeah, some people don't like beer,
They
so
only
they
had
want an
5 different
alternative.
beers and that was all that was available there, period. Light to a dark, and you either had to drink that or nothing. So this is gonna increase who they see.
Do our current ordinances prohibit this? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, they don't prohibit the license.
No, but
the
I'm
behavior
wondering-
that is gonna follow, is kind of the question. I
I'm
think.
wondering if it increases capacity, do they have the parking capacity to support what they're trying to do?
That's another issue with the
Yeah,
planning board.
that's.
That again falls back to the planning board.
Yeah.
Right.
In
And
theory,
the,
this is, it's not,
And the county, state police for traffic, that's not an issue for this.
I don't have any particular objection to having,
it says even if you say on page 7 of 11, non-compliance of licensed premise or its use of local zoning ordinance or other ordinances not directly related to liquor control.
Where are you seeing this?
Page 7 of 11, item 2B. I just think we need to address it. I'm not saying no, I'm just
Right.
saying that we need to, it's here.
Mhm.
And we need to, if we're gonna have a rule, it should be followed, whatever that rule happens to be.
then we do have the option and requirement.
Or, I don't think it's an option, I think it says non-compliance of local zoning, so I think it, I'm not opposed to it, I just think that if we need to almost have a stipulation.
Okay, so they file it, we've got 60 days, right?
But it might just be as simple, this was the concern of the select board, just want to make you aware, and if you're gonna continue, you need to.
And if they aren't aware of certain things that are already in our ordinance, we should communicate that,
Absolutely.
because they might not.
And there's a way to fix it, there's a way to remedy what they're trying to do, it's not, I just think that we need to package it accordingly. So I move that we don't decide tonight, and chat with them about what some of the concerns are.
So you're moving to table?
I'm moving to table it.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Can we invite them to the meeting on the 18th?
Well, you know, I'm just wondering, I think when we get something like this, it would be good to have them come before us. so
I think
we
they
can ask these
should.
questions.
Well,
Yeah.
that's something that you have that option. Many towns do that.
I think we should on,
Some
Anything like
towns
that.
hold public hearings.
Maybe they should bring samples too, I'm only kidding.
Um,
Not a beer drinker.
because who knows the business better than them? They, we can't
Right,
ask the
and if you
questions.
want to schedule a public hearing for the 18th, that it would probably be good if you,
Does this require a public hearing to be signed?
no, that's a local issue.
I think it's a great
So
idea.
since we haven't had a liquor license since I've been here, that might be something that you want to consider to give people a voice.
I think it would be a good idea, because if the neighbors are having issues,
Right.
it would be their opportunity to express it.
Right.
And that, instead of them saying, why'd you approve this license? We've been kept up every night Well, we didn't know.
And traditionally you do post and the neighbors have a chance on a liquor license in other towns, and
Right.
big signs, so many feet, notice of application, so I think that's not a bad idea.
Should we do the hearing at like 5:30 or earlier?
Yeah, we can do it at 5:30, I think that's fine.
So moved.
So on the 18th?
Seconded, all in favor? Business item 4, Sabino Landing update. The complaint regarding unexpected activity at Sabino Landing and the subsequent report provided by the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department are provided for review. Are you taking the lead, Susan?
I'm sorry?
Are you taking the lead on this, or is it?
I'm happy to, we've got some of the residents here also. So I was called over the weekend about some proclaimed endorsed improvement by the town, by one of the claimers who went down with some equipment to include a jackhammer to hammer the ledge away and open the width of the landing on both sides below the mean watermark, which then becomes the state's land as well. Said that the town had approved it when we clearly had not. The DEP was not involved. They damaged personal property land of someone who is actually potentially the footing to their parking area. So I would welcome you guys who live down there to certainly share any further dialogue. He was a clamor. He does have a West Bath planning license, does not live in West Bath.
So we know who he is?
We absolutely know who he is. I think it's a very bold move to, and just to even claim that the town authorized it on an evening after hours. So you go back the next night and I apparently add cement to really stabilize this project, but that didn't happen. Did I miss anything?
And if anyone would like to speak, please introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Jim Pearson, 9 Close Reach. I was there that evening. It was a Saturday night, so kind of difficult to miss. You hear the equipment, you hear the noise, you go check things out, and this individual, I don't know who it was, but on the beach with a small excavator with a hammer, tapping away on that.
We have pictures, we have pictures, substantial pictures of what they did and what they did it with.
Below the water line, as Suzanne indicated, and right up to and including the bank. Now, in terms of being on private property, I didn't notice any of that at all. In fact, that's the first thing I looked for, was the property pin. I think the concern was that because they were chipping ledge away from the high bank that was beneath an elevated parking area, that could be an issue in the future. But wasn't on private property, but yeah, clearly on and above the water line, below the water line.
Town property.
Sorry?
It's town property.
Town and state, below the water line is state. So, and it certainly, regardless of what it is, would be a DEP process to get approval.
Who was it?
Who's the individual?
Brad Stover.
Oh, well, my feeling is that this person, this is a DEP and DMR matter. He's acted without authorization, he's broken the law. What was the?
Does the town have the right to revoke his license?
We don't have anything in our ordinance that says that we can.
And how about his parking permit?
There's nothing in the ordinance about like any kind of violations?
Only normal
Shellfish.
planning, shellfish related. So
Right.
it wouldn't pertain to the activity that he engaged in.
But that has to be some sort of illegal activity, which would then ding
Well,
your
if-
licensing capacity.
There's nothing in our ordinance, it could be state law. I reached out to the Department of Environmental Protection and got the name of the woman who oversees the NRPA type complaints, the natural resource protection laws. She didn't return my call. And I also reached out to DMR, and they didn't return my calls.
Not surprising, but,
I think
This
this
is
time of the
something-
year probably has a
Yeah.
lot to do with it.
but it needs to be followed up.
So I guess that
That's intolerable.
it brings a couple of things to light that we have at that landing. There's a generic sign. There's no hours posted when you can and can't access the landing. There is no stipulation about leaving vehicles unattended on the landing and at the beach there. I don't think the landing is designed to provide access to a particular group or organization when other people in the town cannot then use the landing if they've left parked vehicles there for hours on end. So I think we need to really understand what the rules are. You know, for lobstering, you can't go out like 30 minutes before dawn and 30 minutes after dusk. Are
I think
planning
that's where we
stipulations?
can take a look at our parking ordinance,
So who
and there's a
did-
copy there for Carly as well.
Who gives the parking permit?
Sorry, I had two, my bad.
We issue the parking permits here at the town office. I highlighted some areas that I thought might be of interest to you. What concerns me about our parking ordinance is that it was created prior to 2012. It clearly indicates that the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department will enforce it. I'm not sure there was ever a conversation with the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office. They will not enforce it.
Well, so I actually, I almost wanted to ask that woman to stay this evening.
And the language
Here.
that's in there, I think if Sally reviewed the ordinance as it stands today, there would probably be a lot of redlining.
Can we have her do that?
I would really like to send it to her and see what she thinks.
But I think we should, maybe before, I think there's things that we should certainly include in the generic posting of use.
But
It's beyond just parking. I think, what, we need to look at, what is the state stipulation for, I know they have it for
Well,
lobstering.
we have hours right here in our ordinance that we can lean on right now. So if you wanted to talk about signage tonight, you could use the hours that are in the ordinance.
And I'd really rather not talk about signage tonight. What we have here is a particular issue about somebody who very high-handedly took liberties, well, and clearly
So
did some
if I
damage.
went and did that tonight, how would I get away with it? Why is this person just getting away with it?
Well, the sheriff's office was called. The deputy took a report, which you have the copy of.
But they've done
But they
nothing,
did not,
there was no consequence.
there was no consequence, but they didn't visit the site either.
And,
They told the complainant to contact the town office on Tuesday when she was in town.
Are we the only folks in Saginaw County that don't have a police station?
No.
So then why aren't they acting in that, because we're paying them.
Because this wasn't an issue about parking. We don't have a straightforward ordinance that
It's
says
an issue
you
of-
can't chop up the land.
If
They
someone-
were responding to the complaint.
But if someone breaks into your house, or does damage, or you call the police, so that if they're doing something on a property that's not theirs, that to me would fall under the same premise of a legal recourse. You just can't go and do this without consequence.
If there's no particular law that governs that, it is not breaking and entering, it might be trespassing.
So I can go down to Bull Rock where all that work's been done and start hammering and digging and.
You wouldn't because you're not the kind of person who does that,
But that's not, I think we need to look into this further. I think there has to be
well,
a legal premise here with the
There's
law.
no disagreement that it needs to be looked further into.
Ken,
But this is not, I'm suggesting, the night. We don't have enough information, and we don't have enough response from the people who are responsible for law enforcement in the town. We also don't have a response from the EPA. We also don't have a response from the DMR that says what we can do about somebody who egregiously messes up the shoreline. So we don't have enough information to act, so we need to get information and then act.
But there's certain things you can act upon. So we have under violations on D4, parking of a vehicle that blocks, interferes with, or obstructs normal traffic movement or other parking or creates a safety hazard. That's point blank in there, which is parking on the beach unattended vehicles. That's
But
one.
who does it say will do the towing? It says the Saginaw County will do the towing,
No, and they won't.
and they won't.
Based upon what? I mean, that's my point. I want to figure out what do they do for us on behalf of law enforcement?
I think they need to come to a meeting.
And you know, because they are our legal law enforcement. We don't have a police station, so we call upon them.
And we
To
need to
support us.
understand what they will provide, what they will and will not, and can and cannot provide.
Because they're subject to regulations as well as anybody, so.
if we don't get a response soon, is it something our legislators could help us with?
I think it's so. And I did contact Allison Hepler today because it turns out that the person who agreed to provide some coverage for Shellfish Warden is now unable to do it. And I understand that, he's overextended. It turns out that the towns of Woolwich, Georgetown, and Arousek do not have a shellfish warden. We do not have a shellfish warden. Doug is covering. Doug shouldn't have to cover. If Doug wants to be retired, he should be able to be retired. So I contacted Allison about maybe having a conversation with the county and with DMR and whoever else wants to be at the table to see if we can get something countywide going. So all of these issues kind of mesh together.
But so we have penalties in E3A, you know, for first offense, second offense, you know, if they don't have a permit, parking permit, and they're parking, that's an offense. If they're parking on the beach, that's an offense. And we need to, you know, they shouldn't be allowed to get a parking permit or renew another license if they have unpaid violations, for starters. I mean, we can't just do this without consequence.
Right now, we have no enforcement, the West Bath is not.
So, but
The only way you've got to have the sheriff come and explain what the department can and can't do, because there's certain local ordinances they can't enforce unless an agreement is reached between the town and the sheriff's department.
but if we have a penalty,
Who's going to enforce it?
Yeah.
we attach it to the renewal next year. You don't get it, if you have unpaid fees or penalties, you don't renew,
We are not,
or you don't have a penalty.
the town of West Bath has very limited authority over the granting of shellfish licenses.
It
And
doesn't mean you can destroy people's property, including the town's.
I certainly agree, but we have limited authority. And what we can do about licensing is subject to the Department of Marine Resources.
And I understand that people are down there without passes anyway, parking passes.
So, but then what is the penalty? That's my point. We have a penalty listed for it, and you have it, you've done 3 or more in 6 months, it goes to
So
$500.
What we're
But then-
saying is, whoever drafted this, and we probably need to meet with Sarah Hart.
So it was civil violation in 36 MRSA section 309 1C, this ordinance shall be enforced as a civil violation. That to me is
And
a,
they're fine still, who is enforcing it?
Right,
so let's find out. I mean, someone who's entitled to enforce that. There's a law by the state.
But a law that is not enforceable is not even worth the money that was paid to.
So our
produce it.
residents pay the price instead?
I would like to know from
We
Sally
have-
if these references are even correct.
We must clearly look again at this ordinance, because it's unenforceable. And on beyond that,
We don't know if it's unenforceable, we don't
Well,
understand.
who's
what
gonna go
enforcement
down
is.
there and write the ticket?
Right, that's what we need.
Who's
Well,
going?
so have Mary, Sheriff Mary come here and be like, hey, can you explain
But
what
that's,
you do?
we're going
That's
back
what
to
we-
something that department is refusing to enforce. We cannot make him do it.
Well, it's not if he's required to support the town of West Bath that
If
way,
he's required.
what we need to determine that.
Right.
And you need to have him come here to find out.
That's what I'm saying, bring him to the next, on the meeting on the 18th. But we have a sheriff that's supposed to support us, and if they don't, then where does this town go for that? We don't, where do we go next?
And if it's a matter of budget,
Is there a precedent here? Because a lot of people put in docks in this town, and it's a kind of a difficult permit situation. You send off your permit, it's about this thick. It goes to everybody, including 5 Indian tribes in the state of Maine. And it costs money, and a lot of people get them sent back. So if I decide to put a dock in without permitting, I'm willing to bet you that someone's going to enforce the removal of my dock that I just put in illegally. There has to be a precedent out there where someone in West Bath has put a dock in, which is similar to this, and it had to be removed.
They did remove it.
well, that's where other departments enforce that sort of thing. The Army Corps would step in, NDP would step in, and they
and
would
the
take
Coast
charge of
Guard,
it.
and
Yeah, but he's got a valid point. Who here is, do they choose
But
how
the
they
town,
enforce?
the town's involved in that permitting as well.
The town is, but we wouldn't be the ones. It's actually, when it comes to a dock, depending on whether or not it's in navigable waters, it would be the Army Corps or the DEP who would enforce it.
And the DEP has just not responded?
To this, no.
when did this happen?
Just
10 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Can you just state your name?
yes, Michael Williams of Savannah Road. Just to echo what Jim is saying, when you put a dock in, you also have a town permit. It's
Right.
amongst the many, and you have a code enforcement officer.
Mhm.
The code enforcement officer has the rights to require you to remove things, you can go through the appeal process and the whole thing. So there's a fairly established civil enforcement procedure in place that then relies further on the state agencies you've been thinking about. But I would just like to support something that Ms. Andreessen said this evening. That could happen in the interim. To me, you folks are asking all the right questions about how things are enforced and what the regulation should be, how it should be rewritten, if at all. But there's a question of clarity and expectation. There are people parking on the beach, and nowhere down there does it say, don't park on the beach. There are people coming very early in the morning or very late in the evening, and nowhere does it say that. That's a fairly simple action that the town could take in the interim to help people at least know what the expectations are. Okay, you can enforce it, understood, until you get all this other stuff ironed out. But that can be very helpful, and I'll give you an example. One of our neighbors speculated, I use that word carefully, that the reason this action was taking place is because one individual always parks on the beach, and it's an airboat trailer. They're wide. So the other folks were having difficulty getting down to use the beach as well, the other climbers. And they resorted to their own solution, obviously illegal and inappropriate. But if it was clear that this fellow on the beach, who also does not have a parking permit, was not supposed to be doing that, at least there would be some clarity for all the other users about what the behavior is supposed to be.
And an expectation of a consequence,
Yeah,
if and when we get to that. I am completely on board with that.
I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know in the past, the sheriff's been in different meetings here, and he has stated he cannot enforce the local ordinances until there's agreement with the town to try to enforce those. So there's gotta be an action from the town to the sheriff's department, I believe, before they can enforce local ordinances.
Well,
Because there are local ordinances here, in Georgetown, in Bowden, in Richmond, all over. So there's gotta be some agreement with the sheriff's department as to what they can and can't do.
And he came, that was, when he discussed that with us, that was over a noise ordinance, which we don't have.
I know, it's,
But we do have ordinances here
But-
that are in writing, that we should at
but he
least
said,
post it's 10 PM to 4 AM sign. It says it here, we should at least
but
have
he
that.
said, I believe the sheriff stated more than once, that unless there's agreement with the town in the sheriff's department, they cannot enforce it. We do not, as far as I know, as a town, have any agreements with the sheriff's department to enforce any local ordinance yet. It should be looked to and dealt with, but we've got to have that agreement, I believe.
So what I'm hearing is we have lots of work to do, but in the interim, you folks would like to see
These rules
a
put
couple
in
of
place.
signs posted.
yeah.
One of parking your vehicles, no parking between the hours of 10 PM and 4 AM. Parking by permit only, perhaps.
No vehicles left unattended on the beach.
Well, one of the problems is that the area that was set up as permitted has the current owner, as I understand it, has eliminated that. So there's no place to park, even if you have a permit.
There are, if I may, 2 spaces that are legal, 2 spaces for a truck and a big trailer, where the town widened the road. When you say, Jim, between your drive and Maryland's drive?
Yeah, and, to characterize the neighbor as removing that right for them to park is kind of off base.
Yeah.
In fact, it's way off base. Because,
Well, that's
excuse me,
that is not how
Excuse
it's
me.
seen.
let me continue. Because the neighbor approached the people that used it. In this case, it was Clamors. And said, look, understand that one of you parks there with a trailer, okay? And it's doing damage to that area, their land. And would you be open, if we allowed you to use that from now on, would you be open to improving that? Because it's collecting water, mosquitoes, everything else, and it looked like hell. And they said, absolutely, we'll do that, all right? And that they had the money to do it. They kept using it, and they didn't do anything for a year. I think it came up again, we said, oh yeah, we'll get to it. I think it went on 2 years. And it was clear at that point that nothing was going to be done. So the neighbor said, okay, we made a good faith offer to you. You didn't follow through. You no longer get to park here. Is that fair? I think it is. So that's how it went down.
The problem is, as I see it, that apparently this conversation took place between a person and the landowner, the new owner, and a person has no authority to make promises for land use by the town, or to permits, or to, an individual can't appropriate the funds, and I've not heard of any action at the Shellfish meeting that asked for an appropriation of funds. So there has been a dearth of appropriate communication.
I'm not sure I understand all that happened because I wasn't part of those conversations, Deborah Pearson. But I think what we're not looking at is that's the homeowner's private property. And the person that was spoken to was the head, supposedly, of the Clamors group or representative of the Clamors group. I think I back up a little bit and say, well, that's their own property. So if they're deciding that they're not gonna give some of their own property for parking, that's their right. I'm not sure why that's even being questioned. I thought it was in good faith that they were willing to work with the Clamors. Everybody wants people to be able to clam down there. We're not against people who are using the launch. It's just that there are several ordinances that we think are in place that are not being observed.
Well, and the launch is open to everyone who'd like to use it. And it shouldn't be to accommodate a smaller group when other people also who would like to use it don't have that option based upon a behavior.
And there's a lot of recreational use. There are kayakers and people who are coming in with their small boats.
So I think
for
there's
daily access.
quite a bit that has to be addressed here, but I'm certainly for Mike Williams' thought of start with something, implement some of the boundaries that we already have in place, and let's find a way to enforce the rest. We don't know what that answer is.
Do we know how many permit parking spots there are? Who determined that? And is there still that same amount now, or who would at this point determine?
There's no land.
Well,
Yeah, I can try and answer that in the same way I just did. There is physical space for 2 trucks with boat trailers on the town land where the shoulder was widened as part of the town effort when this ordinance was conceived and implemented. There may be folks who feel there are more spaces there, but they haven't seen how long those trailers are. And so that's roughly what it is. And when we get 3, 4, 5 Clamors or others at the site, they tend to be then moving further down the road and parking on the land that's a combination of town land and neighbors' lawns.
and as far as the number of parking permits that are issued, it's unlimited, but the ordinance allows the select board to decide if they want to limit the number of permits. But at that point, you would need to decide who would be entitled to a permit.
Well, I don't believe we can offer a permit if we don't have the land to put a car on it. That means that I'm gonna take your lawn and I don't think that's proper. So I think we need to really understand what we're gonna authorize. I'm not on board taking someone's land for someone else's use. And so we need to understand how it's done, that, certainly occupying, leaving unattended vehicles on the beach, I think is also inappropriate. So I don't know, I don't have the answer to that. I think we need to look at how are we determining parking permits? Is it frontage on the road? What do we put a boundary, a sign up that says, permit parking between these 2 signs only, no different than you have in Bath. You can park here for 2 hours, and then, you know when you can and can't park. I don't know, I just don't think the select board truly has the authority to offer something that we don't have capacity to provide.
We do have a right-of-way for the road, and it's my understanding that the current paved area is not the current right-of-way. Among other things, a survey needs to be done so that the road bed is marked. Conversation with Ron a few weeks ago. His understanding is that the road to the landing is 40 feet wide. So perhaps there could be some improvements in the road bed so that more parking would be available. Obviously, this is a very valuable landing for a lot of people, and we need to ensure that insofar as possible, access is available to everybody who is entitled to use it.
But not at the risk of the people that live there.
It doesn't, the people who moved there, who lived there, understood that this is a public landing.
They didn't, their survey land doesn't say, I have to give you my front lawn to park on
I'm
it.
not asking anybody to give up their front lawn. I'm saying that there has been mass confusion and that it's time to get it straightened out. We do not need a situation in which people who live in the same town are at each other's throats because of the misbehavior of some miscreants and people who have good intentions. It's not right that this situation has existed for as long as it has, and it's time. We need the ordinance clarified. We need to figure out who gets to enforce it. We need to figure out what access does the town have down there to create parking space. How do we ensure that the people who make a living in the mud harvesting shellfish have access to the most fertile shellfish areas, which are Back Cove and Mill Cove, which is best served by the Sabino Landing. That is the reality.
I think we missed an opportunity when, and I don't remember his name, came to a meeting to offer his land for parking. Is that something that's still an offer?
No,
It's not.
that evening, it was Monty, and he spoke with the community, did they want that, and they said no. And as a community member, he chose not to do it.
And he also said that he would make that offer only if the public landing was not used to access oyster farms, which of course we cannot have.
We can't prohibit that.
A public landing can't be public except for the uses that you want to use it for.
We do need to understand what we own and what our rights are. And I talked to Ron as well, and he surveyed a number of the private properties around the landing. He's gonna bring in information that he has from that research on Tuesday. We're gonna sit down and talk about it. Because I think if he can complete the survey, and we at least have a survey on file indicating what the town owns, I think that's a great starting point, especially if we're going to apply for a grant in the future to improve the safety of the landing, because there are some issues with the safety of that launch. So we will need a survey, we will need to know what we own. I think that's a great way to get it done.
In the meantime, can we put some signs that follow?
Can we listen to?
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to interrupt you because I support what you're saying, but I hear you talking about access to the clammers and the mud and how critical that is. And again, we support that. A couple meetings ago, or several meetings ago, I remember there was some conversation about the town owning another piece of property that also could provide access to, actually, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's to where the destination of the clammers often is, or to the clamming boats. So I'm just wondering where that is now, because my understanding is there was some town-owned land that could provide an opportunity for a second launch. Can you help me to understand that?
That's, no, you're talking about, I think, the piece of land between Hennessy Road and the Hill Road and Glen Circle, Williams Cove.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite a ways down there. It is a steep bank for access to the river from there, and it's also very tidal. So you've got very limited
Very shallow
access
as well.
time frame, because it takes so long for the water to get in as well as else. You could do it probably, but it wouldn't be the best solution because the access is not very good.
Would it be a good solution for the commercial aspect, for the clammers?
No.
If it is tidal and...
No.
They can walk down there now. They park along either the Hill Road or the Hennessy Road. They can walk down there, but it's hard to get when you're lugging 4 or 5 bushel of clams from the other side of the cove or way down the cove back to your vehicle. It's tough to do that. So that's part of the problem. It's just access with a boat. You can come in with high tides going out and be right there, or you're gonna be digging, whereas it's a long walk, either way, 1145 bushels of land.
Does it have any value for any type of a launch there, or with an improved launch,
It's-
or?
Because the tide takes so long to get in and get out, and the cove is very narrow.
I think it's something we could look at, I mean, I could certainly consider.
I don't even know where it is, so.
But the
If you-
cove's
if you drive-
underground.
If you're driving from Berry's Mill, it's probably a quarter mile to a half a mile on the left-hand side. You go on a sharp corner next to the left, there's a telephone pole right there, and just past that, left-hand side, before the hill road, on the left-hand side of the road. It's probably 300 feet
If you,
along the road, and you went down Hanson Road, it's right there, it's that piece of land right there.
if you give me a call, I can show it to you, low or high tide. That land is not suitable for a public landing. It just isn't. It's just as steep as the land off Sabino, and it doesn't have nearly the rock support. It's old hayfield, old pasture.
Does the
pretty
town
late,
have
it's
a
planted.
lot of that type of inventory, that type of land inventory?
Does the town own that? Is
No,
that
is there
where-
additional
No.
inventory? They
In
have,
addition to that, are there other parcels that are,
If you had it, if you had a parcel, would you give it to the town?
no, in the town's inventory?
No.
And I'm asking because if you have a large parcel there and it's not doing anything, what's it doing for the town at this point if it's?
It's a land bank. It's going to be the only piece of property that ever comes to the town that has the opportunity to become a public park.
should look at that then.
So could it be a public park with access at medium to high tide for kayakers, or?
It could be possibly only for kayakers probably because of the steepness. I mean,
And you said like Sabino, steep like Sabino, steep.
Yeah, it's pretty steep.
I'm just wondering if it could take some of the pressure off from the Sabino landing, because we do have a fair bit of kayakers that come in there too.
It could,
Just,
potentially, I mean,
the problem with that piece of property is in the 1960s, they stripped all the topsoil of it. So the topsoil was clay. All the loam was gone. They stripped it right off the whole thing.
it was legal then.
Yeah, they just stripped it.
Michael?
One thing that I think prompts some of our comments about this is that I think we all know that the Sabino Landing can never be a broad sort of community asset. Because even with the 40 feet properly engineered, you still can't turn a truck and trailer around. And that's the inherent problem. It's behind all of the limitations. At some point, the neighbors are going to no longer permit turning in their driveway. And at that point, the landing will shut down effectively. So if we as a town can find ways to, as Deborah just said, to shed some of the demand and move it to other sites, this sort of ad hoc, if you will, use of the landing may be able to continue for a while. But in the long term, if we push the landing too much, it isn't going to work.
Well, I think we need a respectful approach to the community, again, going back to the signs that you mentioned, even if we're not sure where the authority lies for any enforcement at all, and we certainly can look into that. But I'm not opposed to, posting what we have written here in our use guidelines, which certainly talks, nothing overnight from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Certainly stating no parking on the beach, which I don't believe you're allowed to do generically with any of the oils and gas and fuel and whatever else can slough off into the water there during tidal change. So I think there's some things that we can do to enforce what we have here and help bring some harmony back to Sabino for everyone there, both the working waterfront and the residents. And I think that's not a bad way to at least start this. So I actually like to move that we post the signs based upon what our violations and language are here today.
Who is going to purchase the signs and where are they going to be made?
The town would purchase it. I don't see that as a burden for that. And where would we get our street signs made?
White sign.
I don't foresee that as a problem.
Wording?
It says parking.
If we're going to give an instruction to the town office, we need to be specific about what the instruction is.
I'm thinking white signs, red letters. Does that sound right?
And I think it should say, that, you know, if you want me to get very specific, I'm happy to do so. No vehicle overnight parking between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. That's verbatim of D3 on our parking information.
Seems fair.
And I would say, no unattended vehicles to remain at the launch, in the sand, or whatever the appropriate term is.
I don't see that in the ordinance, is there?
There's nothing in the ordinance that says you can't park on the beach, which is another reason why the ordinance needs to be amended.
Well, parking any vehicle that blocks, interferes, or obstructs normal traffic is here. So I guess if you want to put it verbatim, you can say, or no parking. I mean, I say no parking on the beach because you're obstructing access to other people. That's D4 is how it's written as well.
So you put the signs up, which I think is a good start. So again, just to be clear, who enforces the bylaws?
We don't know the answer to that yet. But at least you're setting the boundaries as we have them set today. We don't know that answer.
Well, you might want to get that answer first before you invest in signs.
It's going to take some time to do that. I don't see the harm in putting them up to at least publish what we have posted and in language right now.
I'm against multiple signs. I think if we start with the one, no parking between 10 and 4, and start working on some of this other stuff, so we're not doing things that we can't. I think that's one thing we can do, is put that up, but I don't want to invent things that the attorney or someone's going to say you can't do that.
Well, ask Sally then, how would she put D4 in the language on a sign?
Is D4 the?
D4 is you can't
Parking on the
block or
beach.
interfere or obstruct. I don't know how you would put that on a
Right,
sign.
but it doesn't say you can't park on the beach. Parking on the beach is not interfering or.
It's obstructing normal traffic.
Not necessarily.
We got a lot of work to do.
Because, for one thing, I agree, you shouldn't park there, but unless the town enacts an ordinance to say that, you can't do it as a board, because it's an ordinance.
But obstructing normal traffic. You could say no unattended vehicles, because that's obstructing normal traffic, leaving an unattended vehicle.
You can't, how's the guy gonna dig? Who's gonna sit in his vehicle all day?
Because those vehicles were parked there a long time. I think we could,
A tie.
yeah, so we got,
You
at some point, there's gotta be a whole new ordinance written, let's face it.
Absolutely, but it says you can't obstruct access. D4 states that.
But is that vehicle obstructing access?
If you're obstructing normal traffic and I can't put my boat in, that to me is obstructing traffic.
Does
But
parking
that's
there do
different
that?
than you saying can't park on the beach. That's two different things.
But you can say, you may not leave a vehicle that obstructs traffic. It says it right here, obstructs normal traffic and other
What is
parking.
normal? I'm just saying, this could turn into.
But I said, has
Don't
Sally,
have.
has Sally interpret D4.
Right, but this is not gonna happen overnight, Sally.
But in the meantime, these guys are paying the price.
Right,
down
I'm totally
there.
in agreement of the one sign that I know we can say. It's very, very clear.
There's
10 and 4.
And I just simply want to point out that most of the shellfish harvesters in the town of West Bath are welcome and have been, over the last several years, have been welcome to use the property that my family owns, and we have had very little trouble. There has been very little trouble. And it's a matter of getting along with the neighbors and figuring out how to do that whenever possible. And these people are our neighbors.
And we did that, to your point. We used to own that property that abuts the launch. The first thing that we did, because we realized the Clammers were utilizing that for parking, was to approach them and say, you're welcome to park here. And by the way, it's private property, but we know you have to park somewhere. You're welcome to park there. And they did, and we had no problems. And we have no problems with clammers in general. We have problems with people taking the law into their own hands.
Me too.
Very, very openly.
Yes.
They're spitting in our face, in essence, and it's
And
not, I want to be clear, we do support fishermen.
Thank you. And I have to say that I understand your frustration and the sense of violation. This past, I think it was Sunday morning, we had bicyclists come down beyond the town boundary. No problem about the guy who stopped to fix his shoe before he mounted his bicycle. The guy who came and sat on my front steps while he waited for his friend, I took a little umbrage at that. So I understand what the problem is, but I also understand what the problem is. So we need to figure out ways to live together.
It starts with respect, and I want to make sure that they're receiving the respect
Yeah,
in the community.
we're just bringing it to light.
And that's,
Because it deserves that.
it certainly does, for everybody's sake.
I think sometimes the best way you can handle things is to let the clam diggers, I wonder if they're aware of what took place down there and showing them some of these pictures and sharing them and saying, look.
Oh, they're very aware of what went down in there. I'm pretty confident there was very little activity as it resumed.
Well, I think that there was
There's a difference in
a red tide. So.
Did you have something to say?
Yes, I'm Susan Montgomery from the Savannah Road. I'm trying to get at the root of, there's a lot of history here and a lot of confusion about who does what to whom and why. And perhaps one solution is to get people together, get the clammers who are representative, and get some of the Sabino folks, especially the ones who live around the Lenny, and sit them down and let them talk to each other like they are neighbors and they are human beings, instead of allowing for at least 15 years that I know about, this very adversarial situation. You know, well, the airboat woke me up at 4:30 this morning. Well, they shouldn't be allowed to make noise, but, airboats make noise. So we have never, ever just talked. And if we could do it under the umbrella of the protection, or whatever you want to call it, of the town offices and the select board, maybe it can be calm and reasonable and we can come up with some compromise that everybody is happy with.
I think that should be done.
Is that very idealistic and stupid, or is that,
No,
we've never done that.
It's a great idea.
It makes me crazy. People don't talk, it's all kind of buzzy little stuff, and we don't know what's true and what's not true, and who's doing what. What the DEP, sorry, it's a Massachusetts thing. Why aren't they all over this? If we went up to our rocks on our shoreline, started hammering away and taking stuff out and taking a big, garage for the boat or the launch and make it all easier instead of the horrendous work that it is to get a boat in the water,
They would do.
I'd be in jail. Or Michael would be in jail because I didn't do it.
Well, we don't.
That's outrageous that they aren't doing anything. At least come look at it and say,
Yes.
well, this is minor, you shouldn't have done it, we're gonna fine him, $750.
Right.
It's not your responsibility, as I understand it, it's a state thing. Is there any other beach in Maine that you can park on that I don't know about?
Well, and
I'm going to the beach, so I can park here, I'm a taxpayer, or I work hard, or whatever. It's nuts.
Yeah, and if something isn't done about it, this is going out publicly right now.
Right.
So if something isn't done about it, what happens is it gives license to more of this stuff.
That's right.
Because everybody's got this information now, so.
And I think that the idea of having a joint meeting with people concerned is a really good idea. And I think it could be enormously helpful for people to talk with each other.
Yeah, make them sit together, I'll be cookies, whatever it takes, you know, we can't behave like we're all in kindergarten anymore.
Well, I also think in the meantime, I'd like to hear, not just on this topic, I'd like to understand the Saginaw coverage for West Bath when we need them.
Otherwise, it's a great place to commit a crime, isn't it?
The Shellfish Committee, the Marine Resources Committee doesn't have an official meeting until September. Because this is their primary working year, but maybe we could get in touch with them and talk to folks about maybe setting up something earlier than September.
Can we also invite the sheriff to the meeting? Let's start somewhere and figure out, you know, wherever this discussion goes with everyone, we still need to understand coverage and responsibility.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Collectively.
moving parts to this, so, yeah, we need
I'd like
a
to
lot
have-
of people in the room.
And in the meantime, you continue to follow up with DEP and whoever you see if you can't get some answers.
And I'll send the ordinance to Sally and say, hey Sally, what do you think? And she'll giggle and, you know, make her amendments.
If we, and if we can continue or initiate conversation again with DMR, I know we have a new biologist in our area. If we can, we and probably other local towns need to have some way of enforcing licensure with people who are demonstrably not obeying the law. Certainly the person who did that understood that you don't get to chip up the coast of Maine.
Anybody's property.
It really bothers me that he's not from West Bath and to come in and do something to a town that he's not even a resident of.
And say he has permission to do it.
Right, just as like another slap in the face, I mean.
Well, you would just, it said the town hired him to do it. But I
He was
can't.
doing conservation work, is what he said.
On
Conservation.
Saturday night.
That's like double time.
He was earning his conservation time.
Oh, I don't think so.
Just saying.
Well, you know, maybe we ought to check and see if he got conservation time, because if he did, that would be a huge red flag.
Has he
I'll
said,
let you know if any conservation that is submitted for that.
Thank you. Because that would be a huge issue.
because it's not conservation when you chop up the rocks. Just saying.
Thank you for being patient with us. We know this is not easy. We know, as Christine has been here, we're finding a lot of our ordinances don't meet muster. They're kind of a joke, and she's been doing a lot of work to try to, poor Sally's been extremely busy, our attorney, with all of these ordinances and things we do and don't have, so.
Yeah, well, we're mindful it's a process, so we're patient.
And thank you for bringing public attention to this, because it is a public issue, not just a spinal issue, not just a marine resources issue. It's a very public concern, and it concerns the entire town. That landing is an important resource, as are our citizens.
And let us know that we want to have a cooperative relationship with the commercial aspect of that. So we're not in any way against that, we just want the rules to be articulated and then respected. And we want to be clear about what the rules are.
And that's not a wrong ask. I think that's a proper component to making this work for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good evening.
Thank you.
Yes, enjoy some more of the summer weather.
Beautiful, thank you.
Number 5, American Rescue Plan Act projects.
We have a few projects that were approved at town meeting. We would like authorization to move forward with getting in the queue to have heat pumps installed with town office, replacement windows.
It was 3 heat pumps, is that right?
It's 3 or 4.
Let me pass that information around. David, why don't you talk about the process that the Energy Committee went through to review the different proposals? Yeah.
We had met with many companies over a year ago, the Energy Committee had, and we asked for bids for proposals. We had 7 submitted, and then COVID came along and things kind of stopped. We met and reviewed those 7 proposals, narrowed it down to 3 proposals, and then narrowed it down to the last proposal. And that this is the people we chose to look at and have this board select decide what they want to do, and the town meeting did approve funding for it.
So it's 4 zone, 4 units, is that what I'm saying here? Is that what that means?
Yes,
But it may be a combination of one main
yeah,
unit, and then they pipe off to the different
right.
smaller units.
So there's a 15,000 BTU in where Carly and Julie are, and then a 9,000 BTU in Ron's office, in the code office, and in my office.
The Energy Committee did not envision this being the sole heating source in the dead of the winter. It probably would still be better to use the fairly new furnace for that idea, but as far as heating in the fall and spring, the heat pump should do that, but the AC will be much quieter and much cheaper, and you won't be sticking windows in the unit in the window all the time. So
Yeah,
it'll
we're
save
super
that.
excited about the cooling aspect.
Yes.
And the 42,000 BTU system was actually what Dave's World thought would be best for our purposes
Where would they mount that?
Outside.
outside.
Upstairs?
You know, on the outside wall.
Yeah, it says on the quote, so it's,
Left-hand gable end of the building.
yeah, left-hand gable end of the building between windows.
Straight up the building, okay.
Then they plumb it to the other units.
Yeah. And then with this system, they won't have to feed off of each other.
That makes sense.
Doesn't require the shared capacity, the 36,000.
And is it 12-year labor coverage?
Yeah. Parts warranty, efficiency made rebate.
Nice, big. Give all the cables.
Yeah, we won't have to use those stupid window units anymore.
And the downstairs area will be still set for the thermostat use.
So is it 18,414 less 1,250, or is that including the rebate?
I can remember something I had.
No, I see it, I see a total of 18,414, then I also see a rebate of 1,250.
Yeah, I think that's off of the 18.
Yeah, because on this it's 1250, 16,614, 1250 rebate, so I think
Because
the 18 is before the rebate.
Because the total we appropriated was 18,000.
Because you have to pay that and then get the rebate, right?
Yeah.
So we have appropriated that, and all we need to do is vote to authorize the expenditure. Is that right?
Yeah.
I move that we authorize the expenditure for the heat pump system as proposed in this document.
Seconded. All in favor? Good. Thank you.
The other item we're ready to move forward with is the sign that will be installed at the fire station.
Carly still wants to go and put those little tags out there. You're gonna miss that, aren't you? So much.
Climbing up on the snowbank to change the letters.
You know, I may watch that.
So excited.
So Carly found a few companies to get quotes from. This is the apparent lowest bid. And it gives us everything that we're asking for.
So it's two-sided, I presume, right? Double face, yeah.
Double faced.
And 4 lines of text, plus the logo.
Which you can change, so you can have alternating messages. So just
Okay.
messages in 4 lines, you can.
But you have that much
yeah.
space, 400 text. And then just our town, okay. What color is it?
The sign is black with red letters. And I was talking to the fire chief, something I didn't think about, but you can actually even turn it off after a certain time at night, so neighbors won't have to worry about like the red glow of a sign at midnight. That's nice, which is a whole thoughtful thing. Means a lot to people, and they don't have to look at a sign.
Nice people across the road.
Nice.
I move that we authorize the expenditure as authorized by the town meeting.
Seconded. All in favor?
Vehicle.
I'm so excited.
And the other item, you're gonna have to help me with this.
So when does the sign get installed? Is it before the election, so you can,
Might be a tough call.
Just saying.
By November.
it's gonna be at the firehouse,
That
we
would
could
be
just,
great.
right? Just saying, you could really welcome it.
The other item is the replacement windows, but we don't have a written quote for that. Is that correct? Or am I forgetting?
We had a quote from a local window
A
person.
verbal quote.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And we rounded up a few $1,000s for town meeting, because we knew costs were gonna go up between June and where they're installed.
So the total cost that was quoted was $10,000. Would you be satisfied with just using that company, or do you want to submit it to a bid process? That would require some written specs.
Who was the quote from?
Coastal West,
Oh, they
Paul Trudell.
did it.
You don't wanna look at any of the Anderson replacement windows or any of those folks that,
No, we just wanted to get a price bid line. It was like, a little over $8,000. That's why we went to $10,000, figuring costs way up crazy. So that would allow some leeway for the several months that would pass between town meeting and actually doing the work.
He uses bargain windows, they're perfectly fine windows.
I just think we have a bid process that we should follow.
Yeah, we're wishy-washy, we're going back and
We
forth.
can't,
here again, and
we need
that's
to
gets us
follow
in trouble.
protocol, I agree.
I think you should too.
Okay, how would you like me to get the specifications for the windows? Would you like me to use?
I just have them come quote on it, come see the.
Yeah, but it gets a little bit tricky because say we have Coastal Glass come and give us written specifications.
Or after whatever.
That would be public information. And then we put it out to bid so everybody knows their numbers. So it makes it really awkward. So we should really talk about a process to make it fair for anybody who might be bidding on it.
Can we specify, you need to specify sizes?
An R factor, insulation,
Yeah.
and then let them come and tell us.
Yeah, so that's not something that I can figure out.
At
so.
least R factor,
Would efficiency main give any guidelines?
the state have current standards that John would know about, like code stuff?
I don't think there's a code to a window.
I don't know.
Because there must be considered state-of-the-art stuff.
Yeah, and there's certainly fire protection standards and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Just need a little guidance.
Is there any contractors that would
Oh, maybe.
have a contractor write the bid,
That might be an angle.
because it's not them getting it?
Right.
So someone who builds a house, they say, well, this is what I put for my standard of a window, or,
Are we going to require the brand of the window, or do we care?
I
I think it's, if it meets the standard.
Okay.
There can be a huge price difference between brands, and there's really no difference in
Product.
right.
The R value, the installation costs, the sizes and all that kind of stuff should be fairly easy to establish. Maybe Hammond or Hancock, they do that stuff. And they would know what current.
And they would probably themselves want to bid on it as well. Maybe,
Yeah, maybe install insulins or whatever.
who knows?
I think you're gonna find it's gonna take a while.
And we're talking about all of the exterior windows?
Downstairs and upstairs?
There's 11, 12 windows, 13 windows?
Right here. I'm lightning quick, aren't I? It's the new clock that got me. I saw that coming in the door, just saying.
Okay.
I just think we need to keep a standard of a bid process. I know.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have any problem with that.
And then town administrator.
Do we need an actual motion for her to do this? To proceed with this bid process, or you're going to?
I move that we authorize Christine to pursue the process and the procedure.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
One other question. Before we move on, the insulated doors for the roll-up windows at the fire station. The town okayed that as well.
Yeah, I haven't had any response from PDQ yet. I'm hoping to work with them, so I'll just keep calling them. I'm sure they're very busy, but, you know, it's a small job,
Okay.
but we'll try to squeeze them in prior to our budget meetings.
Yeah, it wouldn't involve the bid process, it's not hiring. a
Yeah, right.
But it's nice to have it done as far as any meeting there would be easier noise-wise.
That's a very nice machine. Or the coffee maker that somebody keeps plugged in. Just like, that should be on a timer, and that will burn the fire station down. Yeah, but how many times have you gone over there and it's plugged in? I've unplugged it many times, actually.
Okay, we need a point of clarification from Fort Casella. They are asking, they want to be clear about whether or not the town wants to reject both oversized bulky waste and construction demolition debris.
I thought they said that had to come during regular business hours
Yeah,
at the
we were-
weigh station versus rejecting it. Or is that
Right,
the same?
but the town only specified the construction debris. They're hoping that the town will have the same rules for both.
Oh, I think that's.
Because it would make it much more standard for them.
Like when you said reject, saying they weren't gonna take it at all versus
During our hours. it's-
our hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm fine with them following protocol for everything.
Same standard. One of the things that I did note, on the price list, there's a differentiation between a large and a small sofa, and I think we need inches on that, because my idea of a large sofa may be different from somebody
I was
else's.
wondering about that too.
Did they also change the pricing for televisions? They said that.
It was free.
It was way, and now they pay like $11 a piece for them to get rid of them, so.
But the old contract, I think, says free. The current contract.
My have times changed.
Yeah.
I've got a couple old ones and I better get rid of now.
Julie reports that we've had complaints about geese on State Road.